The taking, the transport ship Meadowlark had been in transit for 6 days when the alarms began to scream. Sarah Chen jolted awake in her passenger pod, her 14-year-old mind struggling to process the chaos erupting around her. Red emergency lights strobed across the cramped compartment where 23 children slept, the entire youth contingent being transferred from the IO colony to New Haven Station. Around her, younger kids began to cry. "Everyone stay calm." That was Marcus, 16 and trying desperately to sound like an adult. "It's probably just a drill." The ship lurched violently. Sarah's stomach dropped as artificial gravity flickered. For 3 heartbeats they floated. Then it snapped back, slamming them into their bunks. Through the viewport, Sarah saw it. A vessel that looked like a mantis carved from obsidian, its hull covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. It was latched onto the Meadowlark like a parasite, cutting through the hull with beams of light that made the air taste like copper and fear. "They're boarding us," whispered Maya, an 11-year-old clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Sarah, what do we do?" Sarah's hand went instinctively to her throat, fingers closing around the small pendant hidden beneath her shirt. Her father had given it to her before she left Earth. A smooth, warm piece of metal no bigger than her thumbnail. "If anything ever happens," he'd said, his colonial defense officer's uniform crisp and formal. "You press this for 3 seconds. Just 3 seconds, Sarah, promise me." She'd rolled her eyes then. Typical overprotective dad stuff. Now as the bulkhead door exploded inward with a sound like the universe tearing, Sarah understood. The creatures that poured through the smoke were nothing like the friendly Valorians she'd met on Io, or the trade delegations that sometimes visited Earth. These beings moved with predatory efficiency, forearms ending in too many joints, heads that were all angles and no features she could read as a face. Their skin looked like volcanic glass, and when they clicked and chirped at each other, Sarah's translator implant gave her nothing but static and fragmented words. Juveniles. Intact specimens. Easy profit. One of them reached for Marcus. He swung at it, brave, stupid Marcus, and the creature casually swatted him aside. He hit the wall with a crack that made Sarah's chest tighten. "Don't fight!" she screamed. "Everyone, don't fight them." The children huddled together as the aliens moved through their compartment with clinical efficiency, scanning them with devices that hummed and clicked. One of the creatures leaned close to Sarah, and she could see her own terrified reflection in its glossy black carapace. It chirped something, and this time her translator caught a fragment. Primitive. Fear response adequate. Another alien entered, larger, with silver markings along its body. It surveyed the children with what Sarah could only interpret as satisfaction. When it spoke, the translator finally engaged fully, rendering its words in flat, emotionless standard. 23 specimens acquired. Terran juveniles pre-reproductive maturity. Minimal resistance as predicted. It gestured with one of its 4 arms. The frontier species never protect their offspring adequately. Harvest them and prepare for transit. The creche markets will pay premium for undamaged humans. Harvest. The word hit Sarah like ice water. They weren't being taken for ransom. They weren't prisoners of war. They were cargo. The aliens began herding them toward the breach in the hull, toward the dark ship beyond. Maya was sobbing now, and the younger children had gone silent in that terrible way that meant they'd stopped processing what was happening. Sarah felt her own mind trying to shut down, to retreat into numbness. Her hand found the pendant again. 3 seconds, her father had said. The silver-marked alien was preoccupied, directing its subordinates in that clicking, chirping language. Sarah's thumb found the smooth surface of the pendant. It was warm, almost hot, like it had a heartbeat of its own. She thought of her mother, Admiral Catherine Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet, a woman who'd kissed Sarah goodbye at the spaceport with tears in her eyes and steel in her voice. "I'll see you in 3 months, baby. Be safe out there." Sarah pressed the pendant. 1 second. The warmth became heat. 2 seconds. The metal pulsed against her palm. 3 seconds. Something ignited inside it. A sensation like lightning crawling up her arm, and Sarah gasped. The silver-marked alien's head snapped toward her. "What did—" But Sarah was already being shoved through the breach with the others, the pendant going cold and still against her chest. Had it worked? Had anything happened at all? The alien ship's interior smelled wrong, chemical and sharp like burning metal. They were pushed into a holding cell, the door sealing behind them with a hiss of pressurized air. Through the translucent walls, Sarah could see the meadowlark being released, already drifting away like discarded trash. Marcus slumped against the wall, holding his ribs. My parents. They'll come for us, right? Sarah wanted to say yes, wanted to promise rescue and safety and home. But the aliens were already moving with bored efficiency, their body language radiating contempt. One of them glanced at the children and made a sound the translator rendered as pathetic. The Terrans barely track their own ships. By the time they notice these juveniles are missing, we'll be 3 sectors away. Another chittered what might have been laughter. If they even bother looking. Humans are weak, sentimental. They cry and file reports and do nothing. The silver-marked leader approached the cell, its reflection distorted in the transparent barrier. Your species sends its young into the void with no protection, no weapons, no military escort. You are prey pretending to be civilized. The galaxy will forget you were ever here. It turned away, dismissing them entirely. Sarah's hand closed around the pendant again, now cold and inert. In the silence of the cell, with 22 other children looking to her with desperate eyes, she made herself believe. Dad told me to press it for a reason. Mom will come. They'll all come. But the alien ship was already accelerating into the dark, and the meadowlark was just a speck of light fading behind them. What Sarah didn't know, what the aliens couldn't know, was that in the 3 seconds she'd held that pendant, a signal had punched through subspace like a bullet through glass. It carried her biometric signature, her exact coordinates, and a priority code that only existed in Terran military databases. And somewhere, 8 light-years away in the heart of Earth's Defense Command, an alarm had just begun to scream. End of Part 1. Word count, 1087. The beacon is active. Signal received. Authorization code Chen Alpha 7. Priority absolute. The Awakening Terran Defense Command, Geneva Station, Earth orbit, 14 minutes. After signal reception, Admiral Catherine Chen was reviewing supply requisitions when her entire world shattered. The wall screen in her office didn't flicker or fade. It exploded into crimson alert status with a sound like a klaxon tearing through steel. Every other display in the room died instantly, replaced by a single pulsing message. Priority Alpha, Child Distress Beacon activated authorization. Chen Alpha 7 signal source. Sarah Chen. H14 Catherine's coffee cup hit the floor. She didn't hear it shatter. Her hands were already moving, bypassing 3 security protocols with command codes she'd prayed she'd never use. The emergency beacon system. Every colonial defense officer gave them to their children, a final desperate failsafe that was supposed to be theoretical. Something to help parents sleep at night, something that was never ever supposed to activate. The screen resolved into coordinates, trajectory data, and a timestamp that made her blood freeze. 6 days ago, the meadowlark, her daughter's transport. And the beacon had activated 14 minutes ago, which meant Catherine's finger slammed the emergency comm panel. Command Center, this is Admiral Chen. Initiate protocol nightfall. Authorization, Broken Arrow 77 Alpha. I want every ship we have prepped for immediate deployment. Admiral? Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through, confused. What's the... My daughter has been taken. Catherine's voice came out flat, mechanical, the only way she could force the words through her throat. Unknown hostiles. Deep space abduction. I'm invoking Article 12 of the Colonial Protection Act. Silence on the other end. Article 12 had never been invoked. Not once in the 70 years since it was written. It existed for exactly one scenario, the abduction of human children by hostile forces, and its instructions were brutally simple. Recover them. Eliminate the threat. No exceptions. Admiral, Article 12 requires, I know what it requires. Catherine was already striding toward the door, her dress uniform abandoned for the black tactical gear she kept in her office safe. Get me Fleet Admiral Okonkwo and the Joint Chiefs. War Room, 5 minutes. And someone find me Captain Marcus Reeves. The Ghost, ma'am? Now, Captain. War Room, Geneva Station 22. Minutes after signal reception, the holographic display dominated the center of the room, showing an impossible vastness of space with one tiny, pulsing red dot. 20 faces stared at Catherine Chen. Admirals, generals, intelligence directors, the entire command structure of Earth's military forces. She'd pulled them from sleep, from meetings, from their families. None of them had complained. They all had children. At 0347 hour station time, Catherine began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. A priority alpha distress beacon activated. The signal originated from my daughter, Sarah Chen, aboard the civilian transport Meadowlark, which was carrying 23 children from Io Colony to New Haven Station. She zoomed in on the trajectory data. The ship's last logged position was here, in neutral space along the Kepler corridor. The beacon transmitted for exactly 3 seconds before going dark. Signal analysis suggests forced shutdown, not device failure. Fleet Admiral Okonkwo leaned forward, his weathered face grave. Casualties? Unknown. But the Meadowlark is still transmitting its automated beacon, intact but adrift. Whatever took our children didn't destroy the ship. They boarded it. Pirates? Suggested General Park. No. The voice came from the doorway and every head turned. Captain Marcus Reeves stepped into the room like a shadow gaining substance. Black tactical gear. Face scarred from burns that no amount of reconstructive surgery could fully erase. Eyes that had seen things the others only read about in classified reports. The Ghost, Earth's most decorated and most controversial special operations officer, pirates, would have ransomed them immediately, Reeves continued, moving to stand beside Catherine. We would have gotten a demand within hours. This is something else. He gestured and the hologram shifted to show incident reports. In the last 8 months, we've had 4 unexplained disappearances along the frontier. 3 were mining crews. 1 was a research station. Each time the facilities were left intact but empty. No bodies. No blood, just gone. You think this is connected? Okonkwo asked. I think someone's been testing us. Reeves's voice was ice. Pushing boundaries. Seeing how much they can take before we notice. Before we react. He looked at Catherine. This time they took children. And this time one of them was smart enough to call for help. Catherine's throat tightened. Sarah, her brilliant, brave daughter who'd complained about the paranoid dad gift but had worn it anyway. Signal analysis, she said, forcing herself back into Admiral mode. What do we know about the abductors? Lieutenant Sato pulled up spectral data. The beacon recorded ambient energy signatures before shutdown. We've got partial radiation patterns consistent with crash drive systems, specifically the models used by their research vessels. Research vessels, General Park repeated slowly. They took children for research? The Kresh don't recognize human sentience, Reeves said quietly. To them, we're Category 3 sapients, tool users but not true intelligence. They've been petitioning the Galactic Council for years to reclassify humans as harvestable resources. The room went very, very still. They think our children are lab animals, Catherine said, and something in her voice made even Reeves take a step back. They took 23 human children and think they can just, sell them? Experiment on them? Study them like specimens? Okonkwo placed a hand on the table and Catherine saw that his knuckles were white. Admiral Chen, what are you requesting? Catherine looked at each of them in turn. These warriors, these defenders, these parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles. She saw her own fury reflected in every face. I'm invoking Article 12, she said. I'm requesting authorization to deploy the Retribution Task Force into neutral space to recover the children and neutralize the hostile force responsible for their abduction. Neutral space, someone murmured. That could start a diplomatic incident. Start one? Catherine's voice cracked like a whip. They abducted our children from a civilian transport. They violated every treaty, every law, every shred of decency that holds civilization together. And you're worried about diplomacy? Fleet Admiral Okonkwo raised his hand, silencing the murmurs. Article 12 authorizes the use of all necessary force. It also has one additional provision that has never been tested. He looked directly at Catherine. Once invoked, there are no rules of engagement. No proportional response doctrine. No surrender protocols. He let that sink in. If we do this, Okonkwo continued, if we send our ships into neutral space flying Article 12 colors, we're not going on a rescue mission. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you take our children. He stood. All in favor of authorizing the Retribution Task Force under Article 12 provisions? 20 hands rose as one. Unanimous. Okonkwo turned to Catherine. Admiral Chen, you are hereby authorized to deploy all necessary assets to recover the children and eliminate the hostile force. Captain Reeves, your operational commander. I want our people back, and I want the galaxy to understand that humanity's mercy has limits. Reeves nodded once. Sharp. Understood, sir. We'll need the vengeance, the reckoning, and the wrath. Full combat loadout. Zero stealth. I want them to see us coming. You'll have them. Okonkwo paused. One more thing. Once you cross into neutral space flying Article 12 colors, you're effectively in a state of war with whoever took those children. There's no turning back. Catherine met his eyes. Sir, they took my daughter. They took our children. There was never any turning back. Hangar Bay 7. Geneva Station 41, minutes after signal reception. Sarah's beacon had gone silent 41 minutes ago, but its echo was still tearing through space, pulling fury in its wake. 3 ships hung in the deployment bay like sleeping titans. The TDF Vengeance, TDF Reckoning, and TDF Wrath. Destroyers painted in matte black ceramic, bristling with weapons that had never been fired in anger. Until now. Catherine Chen stood on the observation deck, watching as crew members sprinted through pre-deployment checks. Behind her, Reeves was coordinating with his strike teams, 60 of Earth's most lethal soldiers, each one a volunteer, each one a parent. They'll be scared, Catherine said quietly. Sarah and the others. Wherever they are, they'll be terrified. Reeves joined her at the window. Then we make sure their fear doesn't last long. He paused. Your daughter activated the beacon. That took courage and quick thinking. She bought us a chance. She's 14, Catherine whispered. She should be worried about exams and friends and stupid teenage drama. Not this, no, Reeves agreed. She shouldn't. None of them should. He turned to face her. Which is why we're going to bring them home. And then we're going to make sure no one ever tries this again. The loudspeaker crackled. All hands. This is Fleet Admiral Okonkwo. Retribution Task Force, you are cleared for immediate departure. You carry with you the full weight of Earth's fury and the prayers of every human soul. Bring our children home. The 3 ships began to power up, their drives casting blue-white light through the hangar. Catherine touched the window glass, as if she could reach across the light years to where Sarah was waiting.